Hi, my name is Heather. Today I've decided to speak a little bit more about anxiety and my own experiences with an anxiety disorder. So I'm a little bit nervous, so I must apologise beforehand if I start to go off track or I start to rumble on. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 27 and I suppose about 2 years ago I had a real bad bout of an anxiety disorder. And I suppose for many years that I've suffered it really in silence. I started off as a bit of a shy teenager and, typical teenage problems. And I suppose that, you kind of lose your way a bit. And, okay, well, I might have to edit that bit. But, it started, I suppose, when I was 17. I started suffering panic attacks. At the time, I was doing a stressful college course. I decided to train to become a chef. Probably not the wisest idea looking back. And I suppose the pressure of being in the kitchen, the antisocial hours, and as well as going to college, I used to do work experiences, and so I kind of felt a little bit more out of my comfort zone really, and I started to feel very unreal, like an out-of-body experience, and I kind of got very tired, dizzy, and a few times I passed out where I'd worked myself up into a bit of a stressful kind of things. And I suppose what I'm saying is to you is to sort of, try not to worry in the sense that you're not the only one that's going through this. And I'm hoping that this video, I know it's going a little bit offline at the moment, but I'm hoping that this may help you. So I've also wrote some notes because I have this habit of waffling on. 3 times I've said that. So about my anxiety. I suppose that the tipping point came when I hit my 20s. Seeing my friends getting on with their lives, going clubbing. There was just this nagging feeling that I felt very uneasy about things, like social situations, going out and, meeting up with my friends. It just seemed really hard to do, and, my parents decided to move away to Lincolnshire, and I decided, well, I might as well go with them. I actually kind of made myself believe that this would go away. That all I needed was a break from living in London and well, not high life, but it was quite lively down there. But instead, in hindsight, I think I was running away from the situation. And it just sort of got worse. I mean, I started, I suppose, the last 2 years. The run up to this was I started to not go out, not meet up with my friends, and slowly I was avoiding going out to places like shopping on my own. I used to get this sort of panic feeling when I used to get on the bus, and it's really hard to explain, but I think the tipping point came sort of about 2 years ago, December 2011. I suppose the month before then, my friend, she was graduating from university, and she invited me down. My best friend, we've been child friends for years, and I didn't want to let her down, but the thought of getting on a train to King's Cross and then onto the London Underground, it filled me with so much fear. I didn't really, I didn't think it would be that hard to do, because after all I have done it maybe twice since I've lived up in Lincolnshire, but this time it was so hard. I think it was so much different, and I had to let her down, and I told her that I couldn't come to her graduation at the O2 Arena because I had some problems up here, and I suppose she was very disappointed, and I kind of feared that it would damage our friendship, if that makes sense. And I think it had at the time. because she saw it as a bit of a snob. You know, I've got to face facts there. You know, there was no reason why I couldn't in her eyes, but I just felt embarrassed. You know, can I tell her that, you know, I was feeling like this? You know, there wasn't a reason for it. You know, at the time I didn't know what was causing this. So, you know, she graduated without me being there, and I suppose in hindsight it's one of my, you know, biggest regrets that I wasn't there to see her, and, you know, her proudest moments. And I don't know, I feel a bit emotional thinking about it actually, but, you know, she's done very well in her life, and, you know, I should have been there, and I suppose it was just I wasn't well. So let's roll on to December, a month later. I weren't feeling well. I was suffering with suspected glandular fever at the time, and everything seemed harder to do because, you know, I'm not really a great patient, if you know what I mean. So I was trying to sort of keep busy. I didn't know why I was feeling ill. I had this sore throat, and, you know, at the time, you know, my parents had to go down to London for family reasons, and I was left here on my own. And there was a lot of stress at the time, if I remember rightly. You know, my nan was in hospital. You know, there was problems sort of with my sister, and, you know, I was worrying about my nephew. And, you know, it was just sort of one thing after another, the atmosphere, and, you know, it was kind of like non-stop. It was intense from the moment you woke up till the moment you went to bed. You know, there was something always happening, and I seemed to sort of absorb what was going on. I mean, you know, I was trying to look after everybody in my own way, and at the same time I was struggling, and, you know, I sort of put everyone else before myself. And, you know, so my parents, you know, went down to London for a few days. I was here on my own for about 2-3 days. And, you know, I can't really sort of say how it started, in the sense that I can't remember the day before it happened, what was the run up to it. But all I know is that I went to bed, and the next morning it was about 4 a.m. in the morning. I woke up and I felt awful. I mean, I thought I was going to pass out. I was convinced that, you know, I was going to die because, you know, I couldn't breathe. I could feel my heart drumming away in my chest. Boom, 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 you know. And I don't know, it's just, I felt very vulnerable. I never in my whole life felt so alone, you know, that moment, you know, that realisation that, you know, what have I really got to show for my life? You know, at the time I was 25, approaching 26, you know, a month later I would have been 26. And it just, everything got on top of me. I mean, you know, my friends have started to settle down in, you know, sort of stable relationships, and their careers are going very well, and, you know, everything that I've kind of done in the last few years hasn't really been about me. It's been about the people that's been around me. You know, because family to me is very important. I mean, you know, I suppose it's sort of the Irish background within me that, you know, puts that greater emphasis on, you know, families, but really it wasn't doing me any good, being the way that I was. And, you know, that morning I woke up and I put one foot out of bed, and I knew I couldn't get out of bed. It was terrifying, you know. I was hot, I was aching, you know, it could have been sort of a bit of the glandular fever, but I knew it was sort of more than that. I thought, yeah, I could feel the fear now thinking about it. So I phoned up my sister, you know, from my phone next to my bed, and I said, look, I can't breathe, I can't, you know, I don't know what's the matter with me, my heart is beating, I feel sick, I feel like I'm going to pass out, everything felt unreal to me. And so anyway, that morning I I struggled to get dressed. I had this light feeling on my head like I was going to pass out. I got dressed, I struggled out the front door, and I remember walking out the door on my own to lock it, and I sort of double checked because, you know, I've got a bit of OCD as well, and, you know, I went up the road, and I don't know, it was just weird. It was like the world had become a much scarier place. I sort of feared everything. You know, I struggled, and to this day I don't even know how I made it up there. You know, so I got to the doctors, we sat down, told him my symptoms. He put the blood pressure monitor on my arm, and he said my blood pressure was up, my heart rate was racing, and then he sort of diagnosed me with a generalised anxiety disorder. Gave me some anti-anxiety drugs, which I took for a while, but, you know, I couldn't get on with them quite well, so I ended up taking diazepam, well, a short course of it, for maybe about a month or so, which helped initially to, you know, ease it, but after a while it kind of wears off, that kind of effect that it has on you. And from then onwards I've sort of fought to kind of get better. I mean, you know, it hasn't been easy, but, you know, there's worse people off, and I've always tried to sort of look at that life in that way. So I embarked on counselling first off with this, you know, this lady, but I couldn't engage speaking to her. I found it very difficult. You know, sometimes you get on with counsellors and other times you can't, and I think in hindsight I suppose that I was a tougher patient to crack, because I just could not let my guard down with her and speak about how I felt. Then after that I, you know, contacted Anxiety UK, had some therapy, sort of low cost, which helped me for a bit, helped me to sort of focus on things and I suppose make goals to get out more, and, you know, but again I was put on the NHS waiting list for another, God knows, I think it was like 3 months. Till finally I met this lovely lady. You know, she decided to help me with sort of cognitive behavioural therapy, and also my fear of blood tests and stuff, because that's basically where I've been suffering with glandular fever. My anxiety got in the way of properly sort of investigating this, and I suppose in hindsight I've kind of wished that I sorted this out years ago, because, you know, it's not a great way to be. So I had a cognitive behavioural therapy for I think for about 4 or 5 months, but we decided to go down the route of EMDR, which is like an eye sort of treatment where, you know, you have to hold these pads in your hands, like, and they send like a little charge into your fingers. Like, it doesn't hurt or anything, but it's like a buzzing, tingling sensation, and it triggers like a memory in your eyes. So you sort of move your, sort of hold your hand, hold these pads, you sort of think about things, and she'll take you back to your childhood, take you back to a stressful time in your life, and, you know, the whole concept is to sort of lessen the emotion attached to the memory that's sort of holding you back. There's like a little kind of atom, and that one bad memory, everything else clouds around it and builds it in to something huge. And, you know, realising, you know, that I've allowed that to happen, you know, it shocked me out, because to be honest, I was a bit sort